Hey there, this video is about the noise chop. Yeah. The noise chop is outputting a very fancy graph at first, and we see it's describing a random value between -1 and +1. And in order to use this fancy looking graph for our work, we first have to hit this command tab and toggle the switch time slice on. And now we only have one tiny little sample of this graph, which we can use to animate things. So as we see now, this value is going from -1 to 1. So we can use it, for example, if we hook it up to a null, to move a rectangle on the screen. So let's enter a rectangle top. And the rectangle top is positioned from the center. So if it's in the middle, the value is 0 on the x-axis, which is from left to right, and 0 on the y-axis, which is top to bottom. And if I would move it to the right, for example, I would type 0.2 and it's going to the right. Let's hook this up to the position of this rectangle. And now we see we have a little fancy moving rectangle, which is moving from -1 to 1. So how can we move it up and down as well? That's pretty simple. We just have to enter a second channel, and there's one little trick, because right now it's called Chan 1, and I can type whatever name I want in here, and I'll tend to use TX for my X position and TY for my Y position. And now we see the link is broken because we've renamed what was Chan 1 to TX, and we can fix it really fast just by typing TX in here. And yeah, we can hit view active, grab TY and drag and drop it to the Y position. And now we see we have a little fancy moving rectangle on the screen, and I will make it a bit bigger for you to see. And let's talk a bit about the parameters of the noise chop. There isn't much. There is a noise type, which is a different way of how the noise is being calculated. And there is a seed, because this is not a real random number, it's a pseudo-random number, and if I use the same seed twice, it will output exactly the same numbers. But this guy is moving far from any visible spectrum, so it doesn't matter for us right now. But what matters is the period. The period decides or describes how fast the noise is moving through space, so to speak. And if I pull this to the right, you see the rectangle is moving slower and more harmonic. And if I put it all the way to the left, it's getting really hectic. Yeah, speaking of harmonic, and the next slider is harmonics, and you can, the more harmonics you have, the more jiggly it's getting. So you can choose whatever fits the animation style you like the most. Roughness, the next one, describes how fast there happen any value changes. So if we make it all the way to the left, you see it's pretty almost like curve-like, the movement, pretty wavy. And if I put it all the way to the right, you see it's getting more hectic. It decides to change his mind all the time. So it's just usable for a different style of animation. I like to keep it in the center to be very harmonic. The exponent slider, I don't know what it's for. When I use it, I find that everything is going to the center, to the corners more often. So I honestly, I don't really know what it's doing. But I know what the amplitude is doing, and the amplitude is just what value it's getting output. And so right now we have an amplitude of 1, so our value goes from -1 to +1, and if I make it 0.2, for example, we only have a value going from -0.2 to +0.2. Okay, so let's keep it back to 1. There is some transform stuff in here, which is applicable for if you don't have time sliced enabled. You know, this thing that gives you one value instead of a wave or a curve. I will go over this in another video because it makes more sense in 3D space, as well as constraints, which is really fancy. Channels we covered. Yeah, you can enter more values to have more outputs from one noise with the same parameters. Yeah, and command tab is here for enabling time slice. Yeah, so period is very useful, and channels. Yeah, and that's all you need to know about the noise job.